What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans. I'm joined today by Aidan and Cammy Anderson, and we're back with another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. On today's episode, we'll be covering the draft, some trades that have been happening, some trades that have just happened and that are yet to happen, and some other bits of news that is going on in Netsland. As we record this, free agency is still running wild, so we'll be refreshing our Twitters, looking for those watch bombs as they happen throughout the next little while. But before we go any further, make sure you check us out on Twitter and on Instagram at UK Nets Fans, and the pod itself at BK to UK Pod. But gents, yeah, it's been a busy week.
Yeah, it's been quite the busy week. Obviously, tons of news to dissect, and still plenty going on with the kind of James Harden rumours. Also had the draft, and yeah, plenty going on, as you say.
Yeah, it's been mad. I mean, I think it's going to be every week now that the news is just going to get more and more out of date, just because there's so much happening every single day. I mean, obviously we've had the draft since then. We've had free agency. There's been so much talk. It's just, yeah, it's been a lot to keep up with. So it'll be good to kind of talk about it today.
Yeah, it's becoming like a full-time job trying to get to keep up with everything. what I feel most badly is for everyone that does a Nets or anyone that does a draft preview. For anyone, so the Nets have been publishing out all these little sort of write-ups from the people that, we could take this guy and we could take this guy. But at the end of the day, the Nets traded the number 19 pick for Landry Shamet coming through from the Clippers. Guys, what did you think of the pickup of Landry Shamet?
Yeah, it was good. Happy with that. I mean, they could have it would have been nice if they made it about 6 p.m. our time, because then it meant that we wouldn't have to stay up till 3 a.m. just to see the Nets make a move within 2 minutes of their draft pick. But yeah, I mean, let's face it, we're probably not going to get someone as good as Shamet with the 19th pick that can come in and work now. When we were talking about the draft last week, we were saying about how we want someone who can come in, can make an impact. We're not really in a position where we need a project. And yeah, I think Shamet will come in, he'll do a good job. He's played with stars already. He is a good shooter, a hard-working guy, and yeah, no, I think it's a decent pickup. And yeah, we said that as well. I mean, if there was going to be a move on the table that was worth the 19th pick, Sean Marks was going to do it. And yeah, no, I think Shamet will probably impact really well next year.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with it as well. Obviously, Shamet's, as Aidan says, already played with stars, and I think quite importantly, last season at the Clippers, obviously played with really high expectations. Obviously, they had the Kawhi and Paul George come in, and there was huge expectations on them to do really well. Obviously, it's the same for us this season with Kyrie and KD going to be able to play together. Possibly even have James Harden in that mix. So he's kind of got that experience. Obviously, well known for his three-point shooting ability. I think he's averaged about 40% from free since coming into the league a few seasons ago. And I mean, yeah, I'm quite chuffed with it, as Aidan says. Probably couldn't have got much better than that at the 19th pick. And another kind of concern I do have, though, about this pickup is we seem to have about 500 guards now. Surely someone's got to give. I've got to make moves sometime, because as the last time I checked, we can't just play all these guards. But yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I thought it's not until you see it sort of written down just how many guards we do have under contract for next season. So when it first happened, I was a bit reluctant to kind of do any digging on Shamet. Obviously, you kind of know his reputation as a three-point shooter off the bench and stuff like that. But I was kind of reluctant to do any more digging, and you really kind of go deep on Landry Shamet highlights and all that kind of stuff, because I was convinced that he's just another piece we could move in exchange for a certain all-star MVP, former MVP that may or may not be coming our way. But yeah, if he is to stay, and I know kind of social media from the team isn't always the best thing to go by, but you know, they've already sort of been engaging with him and kind of been sharing welcome to Brooklyn and all this kind of stuff, and they did like a Instagram stories ask me anything kind of vibe with him. And he comes across as a really nice guy. Obviously, he was outspoken in all the kind of social justice issues that came past last season, which is really, really good to see. I know Brooklyn Nets ownership is quite keen on, you know, supporting that kind of stuff. So from a culture fit, it seems like he's really good. As you say, he's played with stars. So he could be a really nice piece if he stays around. I don't know how much. Do you guys know how much he's getting paid at all?
Yeah, I think he's still on his rookie deal, so I think he's only about 2 million this year. So he's probably earning less this year than the 19th pick would have been this year, just with the way that worked out. So again, net saving a wee bit of money there. Another thing you were kind of saying, it's a nice fit. I read online as well that his girlfriend actually stays in New York as well. So I think they're quite happy about that. I think he was with her at the time when it got announced that he was moving. Put something interesting on Instagram. He's playing Empire State of Mind and drinking some wine and eating a steak. So I think he looks like he's pretty happy. So yeah.
I mean, happy, John. I mean, obviously, LA is not a bad city to live in, but obviously Brooklyn's where it's at, right? But yeah, so that was obviously our first rounder was the number 19, which we obviously shipped off for Landry Shamet. But we were also active in the trade in the second round. We picked them a number 57. Nets selected Reggie Perry out of Missouri State, I think, power forward, known for his defense. Have you guys had a chance to have a little bit of a deep dive on who Reggie Perry is and what we might expect from him?
I mean, I can't say I know all too much about Perry, but certainly looking at some of the achievements that he's had in his early career is quite impressive. I'll just have a quick read of my notes because there is quite a decent list here. So he was the Southeastern Conference Player of the Year 2020, a McDonald's All-American in 2018, MVP at the FIBA Under-19 World Cup in 2019. So, I mean, there's some pretty good accolades to have acquired. And yeah, he has dropped to 57th and very nearly wasn't drafted. But I think that certainly shows that there's something about him. Maybe for a multitude of reasons, things haven't went as expected for him in those kind of years since all these awards. But certainly looking at that, it gives me the vibe that he could be a steal. I did have a quick look at his numbers, and from last season to this season, his points have near enough doubled, and he's added about 3 or 4 more rebounds to his like every night. So, yeah, I mean, I think he could be a really nice pickup. Whether he plays all that often, I'm not too sure. But given the kind of stuff he's done and the improvement he made in the past year, he could be quite a nice wee player that we've managed to get our hands on.
Yeah, no, I have to admit I was fast asleep by the time of the 57th pick. I didn't wait up that long. As soon as they traded that first round, I was like, yeah, pretty safe to go to bed. Don't know much about Perry. All I know is that he was kind of mocked to go about, I think it was early second round in a lot of mocks. So it's quite like Sean Marks. He likes going for these players that he thinks, they should have been gone a long time ago in the draft. And you never know. I mean, you just have to look at some of the players that have gone really late in the second draft. And I always go back to Isaiah Thomas. I mean, he was the 60th pick. And look at him. He was he's been a multi-time All-Star. So it doesn't really matter where you get drafted or if you get drafted at all. It just depends on how you grow when you come into the league. I don't know what they're going to do with him. To be honest, he's probably going to spend a lot of time in Long Island. They could even stash him somewhere abroad, but he's certainly not going to see many minutes in the first team. But you never know. He could turn out to be really good. And if Sean Marks is after him, then I always think everyone around the league is going to think, he's probably going to be a steal because he does so well in the draft anyway.
Yeah, it's a good drafting team. I think. Well, we just saw that Fred VanVleet, obviously undrafted, and he's done all right for himself today with his. Was it 85 million or something he's done very well.
Money.
There was a it's funny you see, obviously I didn't stay up to see the draft, but like having watched it back on social media since, it's really interesting to see how like an NBA draft via Zoom works. But yeah, apparently some of the people were like hiring Airbnbs and stuff so they could just fit all their like loved ones in to like, which I thought was a really, really good stuff. Did you guys stay up and watch it? And what did you think of the presentation?
I stayed up until, like Aidan, when we traded away that pick, that was bedtime for me. But obviously watched all before it. And so some of the places these boys were in were pretty impressive. Obviously, LaMelo Ball, who went third to the Hornets. Yeah, I think he had half of LA in his house with him. There seemed to be hundreds of people. Obviously, in times like this, whether that's really allowed or whether it should have happened, I don't really know. I do know it probably shouldn't have happened, but yeah, there were some really interesting things there, and I'm now forgetting who it was, but in fact, it was Spike Lee who was with Cole Anthony, and some weird kind of things going on. But I think, given the circumstances, they managed to make quite a good job, given that it was a glorified Zoom call. The way they managed to do it, and with all the kind of hats, and yeah, I think that was quite interesting. I do kind of think did all these players kind of already know long in advance? Did the NBA know long in advance? So they only had a few hats, so it could have only been a few teams that were picking them. What had happened if, like, yeah, I mean, I think it was maybe a bit set up. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it just kind of gave me that vibe, given how few hats that they had available to them in this tiny little trunk. And then, what were the chances they all had the hat of the team that they were drafted for? But yeah, I think it was an alright presentation for the circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's quite nice that. Sorry, I thought it was quite nice that Adam Silver wasn't just in his like home office. He had like a proper big set and all that kind of stuff. So they sort of made sort of steps to make sure it kind of looked a bit legit, and it was still a big deal because for the 60 or so people, or however many rookies got drafted yesterday. It's like that's a huge life-changing day. So it's nice that with everything horrible that's going on sort of everywhere in the world, it's nice that they could kind of still make a bit of a ceremony out of it,
Yeah, no, 100%. It was interesting. I mean, I've watched the last couple of drafts. I kind of usually make it a bit of a tradition, order a pizza and have a couple of beers, watch the draft. It's nice. Look forward to it every year, and I just think because you get so much of the stories like about the different players, I find that really interesting, especially for like coming into the season. You think, oh, there's that guy, yeah, and there was kind of a story about him with that. And they really kind of focused on that this year because they were kind of not getting the face-to-face interviews. Like, I mean, the interviews that they had were a wee bit awkward. I have to say, it was like because there was that bit of a delay, and there was that many kind of family members around them going absolutely mental for some of them. The interviews were a wee bit awkward, so they'd done kind of like a background story on each player. Some of the stories like coming into like for some of these players, you think, how have they got to where they are? Like so much adversity, especially like it's just you think it's like there was one guy, I think he lost his grandmother and his mum within like the space of like 2 weeks when he was like 9 years old. It's like, how do you fight back like from something like that and do so well? So it was cool. I enjoyed the way they did it, but it's not the same when it's like it was from when it's in the Barclays Centre and you've got like everyone kind of sitting in the middle, like all the lottery picks. It's a great atmosphere, and I think they'll definitely be trying to get back to that next year.
Yeah, it's pretty special. Well, the good news is we don't have to. We'll have to stay up as late into the 2021 draft because we traded our second pick, along with everyone's favourite Zanan Musa. It's a sad day for many as Musa got traded on draft day. The Nets traded Musa and a 2021 second-round pick to the Detroit Pistons for 6'4" guard Bruce Brown. So there's an ESPN article that said that Bruce Brown is a tough, defensive-minded guard who's expected to be part of the Nets' backcourt rotation. A second-round pick in 2018, Brown started 99 games in his first 2 NBA seasons. First question, lads. Are you sad to see Musa go?
No.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Bit of division in the ranks. I'll see where, because like I know obviously Musa at this point is a bit of a meme, and he's just like it's just everyone knows he's not good, or not sort of to the level that we want him to play. But I try to keep objective with sort of everything that I try and do. But the thing about Musa is when he runs, it looks like he was running in treacle. So he was just a bit slow. And I only just found out he's 6'9". Why? Like, he doesn't play up to his height, if you know what I mean. It's not like he's always just...
He's got some arch in his back, isn't he?
Yeah, I thought my posture was bad.
I know. Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, I noticed that actually when he got drafted. I was like, 6'9". I was like, oh wow, this guy could probably play in like all 5 positions. Like, fantastic. And you saw him like standing next to Adam Silver. I was like, he doesn't look 6'9". And then like it was within the first couple of summer league games, I was like, he's definitely not. He's like he looks like he plays like 6'6". But yeah, I liked Musa. I mean, I always go back to that. There was the games in China against the Lakers, like the preseason games. He was amazing. He was like shooting like 80% from free, like from like half court shots. I enjoy watching Musa play at times, but it just didn't seem to work out for him. I saw someone put on Twitter, they were like saying that it's like in Musa, the only guy in like Nets history that can come on in garbage time minutes and take every single shot for the team. Like, he just was going absolutely mad. But yeah, he could find the right team for him. It could be the Pistons, it could be someone else, and he does really well. But yeah, I just don't think the Nets was the right team for him. But he could still come good. So,
what do you think, Cammy?
I mean, as Aidan said, I think it could well have been the case that we just weren't to the right fit, and I think that goes for a lot of players. It's not just something that happens with Musa in the Nets. And I mean, yeah, as you said, he kind of became a bit of a meme, and I mean, maybe not a cult hero, but he kind of had a lot of fans just kind of liked him because he was rubbish, but wanted to see him do well. And yeah, I mean, for me, he wasn't very good, and you're kind of wanting more from. If you're giving players kind of minutes at the end, you want to kind of see them do something, kind of stake a claim for a kind of more minutes or like higher up on the rotation. He just didn't really do it, barring maybe one or two games for me anyway. And yeah, perhaps the Pistons could be a good fit for him. Bruce Brown, who've got in return, he certainly seems more kind of suited to us, as we've already said, really known for his defending, and it seemingly come on leaps and bounds with his kind of offensive game as well. I've seen a lot of people kind of tweet that, and I think a key thing for me when I'd seen the trade happen was the amount of Pistons fans who were taking to social media and kind of sharing the disappointment. One fan posted a video a few minutes long saying how disappointed he was to lose him, and whether that means he's any good, and it's absolutely no guarantee that he is. But I mean, I think when you see so many fans share their disappointment, it says that there's certainly endearing things about him. So hopefully he manages to show these things that the Pistons fans are all big on and can maybe continue to kick on in the offensive kind of stage of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's no secret that the Nets need a defensive-minded guard. And if we get that with Bruce Brown, then that would be really, really cool, going alongside the kind of offensive weapons that we have at our disposal on the Nets roster going into next season. Yeah, so Zach Lowe and Kevin O'Connor have both had very, very good things to say about him as a player. So he should be an exciting addition. As you say, Cammy, it's just like, without seeing him play, it's hard to really get a rounded kind of picture of what the guy will be like. But if you see that Detroit fans are upset that he's going, then that kind of speaks volumes. And yeah, it's sort of the defense needs to come from somewhere, I think. Obviously, someone we were eyeing was Drew Holiday, and he's gone now. In a trade that was sort of a little bit fraught with a little bit of sauciness, because it did include Bogdan Bogdanovic, and then it didn't include Bogdan Bogdanovic, and there was a little bit of tampering going on there. But what do you guys think of Drew Holiday definitely not coming to the Nets? Do you think he was ever really in play? Is that a big loss for you?
Yeah, I don't know if he was in play. I think he was probably on their board for targets to go for, but once they saw the price that he actually went for to the Pelicans, I don't know if he's worth it, to be honest with you. The Bucks are absolutely desperate. I mean, without being biased, I think a lot of teams in the East are scared of Kevin Durant and the Nets this year, and if they want to even compete, they just need to get stronger. And I think we saw in that Holiday move, that's what that was. It was a lot of draft picks, and yeah, I think he'll do well for the Bucks. And yeah, that it's just all about them trying to keep Giannis as well. I mean, they need to at least get out the East this year, I think, to keep Giannis, or else he'll be chirping up again. So yeah, to be honest with you, I think going back to what we said last week, the package that we can put together for a decent player, I think we can get a better player than a Drew Holiday. And yeah, he'll do well for the Bucks, but again, yeah, he's never won anything. He's never been a player that's kind of changed games. He'll do well for the Bucks, but yeah, I don't think he's the right player for us.
I mean, I think we were heavily linked with him for a long time, and I certainly wouldn't have complained had we brought him in. But as Aidan says, it was quite a high price, and given the kind of players that we have been linked with between Beal and also James Harden, I completely agree. There is certainly better kind of players we can use all the assets that we've got towards. And I mean, I don't know whether the whole kind of Harden situation meant we didn't really pursue Holiday all that kind of hard, but yeah, as Aidan says, I think he'll probably do all right for the Bucks, and yeah, I agree again that teams are fearing the Nets, and I mean, I'm delighted that that's the case.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice. I think sort of we've often said. I know last week we said that the Nets need a Giannis stopper on our roster. Do you think this is maybe a move that the Bucks made to get a Kyrie stopper? You know, someone to defend your best guard and stuff, because Kyrie can obviously take over a game.
Yeah, definitely. They'll be looking at these teams will be looking at the Nets and they will be looking at kind of Kyrie and KD and how they can stop them, because we haven't seen that the two players in the court as well. Teams are still trying to figure out how they can put teams together to stop them, because they have to be the favourites. I think even with like the team sitting at the moment, we definitely have to be the favourites coming out of the East next year, I think. And yeah, someone like Holiday will certainly help that. So yeah, I think as well there's going to be so much more activity in the East. I think the Heat are still to do a lot of business, and I think the Celtics, they definitely sound like they're going to try and make a few more moves. So yeah, I think any help they can get to beat the Nets is what they're going for at the moment.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of an exodus a bit at Boston, doesn't it? So obviously, as we sit down to record, it's just gone live that Gordon Hayward's just got a whole chunk of change out of the Charlotte Hornets. So that's interesting. I think Al Horford has also made a move as well. So Enes Kanter has also made a move. So maybe it's because we Nets fans have a complicated relationship with Celtics and free agency, but you know, maybe there's something going on in Boston, and maybe it's not all rosy. But I suppose we'll all have to wait and see. Obviously, with everyone that people are signing, there's also players that have been waived to make room for these players, and we got the very sad news recently that the New York Knicks, the worst team in New York, have waived Theo Pinson. Not much to say on this one other than it's a very, very sad day. Theo Pinson was obviously a huge part of the Nets' identity during like that kind of post-PG Kevin Garnett era and the kind of D'Lo ascendancy era, maybe the rebuilding years, maybe we call it. But the guy was a walking meme. Did he even play a game for the Knicks? I don't think he did.
No.
But he's been waived, so hopefully he can find a home somewhere. But what do you guys think of Theo and his game?
Bring him back for the dancing. That's all I've got to say. He can sit on the end of the bench, just dance, get that kind of culture back. Obviously, I think a lot of people have said that the Nets have destroyed the culture, kind of with the moves they've made in the past year or so. And yeah, bring him back just for the dancing. Nothing else. Doesn't need to play. Just get a hype man on the bench, and we'll be sorted.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think he was too good for the Knicks. Like he's that type of character. It doesn't fit them, you know. You've just got to laugh at the Knicks as well, because they've failed for a second straight free agency. They've created all this cap room by declining these players' options, and it looks like they're going to get absolutely no one. So yeah, I think Theo Pinson. Yeah, I think he could get another contract somewhere in the NBA, but if he's going to go to the EuroLeague or go to China or something, he's gonna be class anyway. So. To be honest with you, look at some of the games last year that Pinson played. I think back to that, there was a Boston game where I think he started, and he was absolutely class. And it's tough. It's a tough league, and it's so easy to drop out of it when you're like a player like Theo Pinson. But yeah, I think he'll be back one day. So
yeah, a player with that higher character, he's got to find his way, but. Whether it's EuroLeague, hey, if he might even find his way to the BBL, and then we'll get him on the podcast or something. We'll find a way to have a pint with him, maybe. But another player that has left us, unfortunately, is Garrett Temple. Has signed a 1-year, $5 million deal to go to Chicago, play for the Bulls. Obviously, the Nets declined his team option. I was a massive fan of Garrett Temple. I didn't think he was that bad actually on the court. It was just like a steadying force in the second unit. I think obviously with all the injuries and stuff we had this season, he was probably asked to kind of play a bit more of a major role than he probably thought he was going to be. playing when he came in? Because obviously he was announced at the same time as the clean sweep tweet went out. So yeah, it feels like Temple's had a bit of a raw deal. But yeah, I'm sad to see him go. Do you think it's purely like a money thing? Because obviously we declined his team option. He was due to get a 5 million with the Nets, but obviously we kind of declined that, and he's got 5 million somewhere else. What do you think of Temple leaving?
I mean, I think it is entirely a kind of money situation. I know from the Musa trade, I think we saved a couple 100,000 there as well. So obviously, with the kind of some of the names we were being linked with, like the likes of Serge Ibaka, whether we were able to get him on the mid-level exception, I'm not too sure, but we need the money to be able to pay that. And if kind of making that Musa for Brown trade and declining Temple's option allows us to do that, I mean, I don't think there'll be many people who complain if it does come off.
Yeah, I mean, I like Garrett Temple as well. I thought he was great. I thought, especially in the bubble as well, we saw some really good games from him. And to be honest, even off the court, like someone that high up in the Players Association, it certainly can't hurt, to have someone like that close to the organisation. I mean, it's not bias, but it certainly helps when you've got someone within the organisation having their say at these type of meetings. I've actually got a bit of a theory on this one. See, I don't think it's all about money. I think there was probably a conversation that happened with Sean Marks and Garrett Temple, basically explaining what his role would be on the team this year compared to last year. Got to think about these guards that we brought in and the type of trade rumours we've been talking about. He could have been told, look, you're not going to have a big role this year. You're going to be near the end of the bench. It's completely up to yourself. I mean, we could keep you on, because I'm sure they would have done just to have someone like that around the team. But he's probably going to have a decent role in the Bulls this year, so he's probably going to get more minutes there. And he's not an old player, so he's still going to give some good minutes to teams. But yeah, I think that's what's happened. I think he's definitely been told that you're not going to have as big a role as you did last year.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think Bradley Beal said he was the best teammate ever. Obviously, Prez, he's the consummate professional. Like, I don't think anyone's ever had a bad word to say about his kind of how he carries himself as a man and as what like an NBA athlete kind of should carry themselves as. I think he'll do really, really well on the Bulls. Obviously, they're going through their own little kind of rebuild situation. So as a veteran presence, I think he could be really, really good. So wishing nothing but the best for Garrett Temple as he moves along. But something we've not touched on, that we touched on a lot last week, was what has happened to all the James Harden rumours? It's gone dark on us. Is he coming? I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's coming. Yeah,
I'll say the same.
Yeah, okay. You think he's coming as well? Yeah, no. I felt that, like, I watched back last week's episode with it being the kind of the first one, and I was listening to myself talking about James Harden. I don't think I actually talked enough about how much I like James Harden. I'd say probably my two favourite players out with the Nets in the league is James Harden and D'Angelo Russell. So imagine getting to see someone like James Harden on the Nets as well. It would be great. It's tough. I mean, we talked about it loads last week. The package is going to be huge. I was talking to a few NBA fans that are friends last night, and they were saying this is probably going to be the biggest trade of all time. I mean, it's bigger than the AD trade. If it goes down, it's going to be a bigger package because he's a better player, I think. I've got trust in Pooch that he's got the right contacts, that he knows what he's talking about. And yeah, Pooch is going to have contacts as well, different from Woj and Shams. I mean, it seems to me, I see Woj and Shams as like when there's a deal done, that they seem to then get contacted and say, look, here's the information, you can do what you want with it. Whereas I think people like Pooch, he's chatting to these people like on a day-to-day basis. He's got those contacts, so he knows what's going to happen before it actually comes into play. And yeah, for Pooch and for the Nets, I hope it does happen now. Yeah,
shout out to Pooch for the kind of work he's done, obviously saying that there's a kind of verbal agreement in place. And I don't know if that is just the kind of reason why things have kind of went a bit dark. Obviously, the deal is kind of in place, whether we're waiting for the end of free agency, or I'm not kind of too sure what we could be waiting for, unless there's maybe some trades that the teams have discussed that they're going to make that could then can it make the package that bit better? I really don't know. But yeah, shout out to Pooch, and then obviously the other guy who's been reporting quite heavily on it was Farbod Esnashari. So he kind of backed up what Pooch had said, and yeah, I mean, I'm pretty certain that we will see Harden in a Nets uniform. But that said, my stance from last week hasn't really changed. I'm still 50-50 on whether I think it's a good move or not. Obviously, 50% for he's an MVP caliber player, 50% against, we're giving up a lot, and if it all goes wrong, then yeah, we could be in a bit of bother. But yeah, just need to wait and see. But I think he probably will be a Net just shortly.
Yeah, it's exactly as you say, Cammy. It's like my head says it doesn't make sense. It costs too much. He doesn't fit. There's not enough touches to go around. But my heart's like, but it's James Harden. Like, he's one of the most dynamic scorers in the league, like possibly ever, like perennial MVP candidate. So is it just a nice problem to have that, you know, you've got Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni on the bench, who are possibly some of the most sort of incredibly talented and knowledgeable offensive minds the NBA's ever seen. So, you know, maybe it's just a nice problem to have, as I say, and they kind of do the deal and make it work afterwards. But what worries me is Woj, as Woj was quoted as saying that Houston's going to want a monster haul back. And yeah, it just goes back to that package. You're going to be doing Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie and Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince and loads of picks. And it just feels like a lot. The weird thing is, like, that core group of players sort of covers so many different positions for us and different needs. If it was like we had a ton of decent point guards and we kind of swap in, it's like, okay, we just need to kind of shore up our point guard depth. But because, you know, that's almost a starting five, it's just crazy. And it you know, it does just make me hesitate a little bit before we do get Harden in. But one thing that I did notice, going back to our draft conversation that I didn't bring up was at number 52, so just before we selected Reggie Perry, the Houston Rockets selected Kenyon Martin Jr. with number 52. So if the James Harden deal somehow included Kenyon Martin Jr., who obviously had like a massive time with the Nets, was really, really a massive part of their success in the kind of early 2000s. I think that would be a really nice kind of story. What do you guys think about adding that kind of wrinkle? Would that make it any sort of a nicer pill to swallow or anything?
I think from a nostalgia point of view, definitely. I mean, Kenyon Martin was a Nets player long before my time as a Nets player, as a Nets fan rather, not a player just yet anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a really nice story to kind of see the son follow in the footsteps of the father, obviously two Nets players, and I think that would be nice. We've seen a lot of kind of players whose fathers have played in the league, they've followed them in. We mentioned him earlier on, Cole Anthony, he's one of them. And yeah, I mean, I think it'd be quite nice to see that kind of go full circle, if you like. Another thing that I wanted to touch on about Harden as well, just going back to him, was the fact that Woj was reporting he turned down a $50 million a year extension. Now, if that doesn't scream, get me to Brooklyn, short of him coming out and saying, I'm wanting to Brooklyn, I have no idea what else he could actually do, because turning down $50 million is insane. And I think that will really annoy Houston, because obviously, as you said, Matt, they're looking for this monster haul. But when they know the player wants out, whether he's got 2 or 3 years left in his deal, and yeah, I mean, I think that really kind of devalues the kind of package that we should give. We shouldn't be going too much, because we know that he wants out. He'll force his way if he has to. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things, and would be cool if Kenyon Martin Jr. did end up in the trade somehow.
Yeah, I think it's going with the 50 million. I mean, that's crazy money. It just shows again how much of a players' league it actually is. I remember a few years ago when Harden signed his deal with Adidas, like for his shoe contract, something like 500 million over like a certain amount of years, and you think, you can afford to give up that kind of money, which is mad in a way. It's just crazy money. You know, so many players will be looking at that. They were actually like, you go on Twitter and they're like, "What is he doing?" It's like it's mad. But yeah, you're spot on, Cammy. It shows his desire to move, and yeah, he's not getting any younger, James Harden. He's wanting to win a championship. That's the type of decisions you need to make if you want to win before you retire. But yeah, no, it could happen like for Kenny Martin Jr. I was actually going through when I woke up the next morning, I was going through the different picks and I saw his name and I was like, what? He was like half asleep. I was like, Kenny Martin Jr. I was like, I wonder. Yeah, I think it probably made a lot of Nets fans feel old seeing someone like that get drafted. I felt old looking at LaMelo Ball get drafted. And I was like, I remember when that guy was like 11 years old watching his brother play. But yeah, something like that could happen to make up the players in the trade. They need to get they'll obviously need to put a couple of other players back to the Nets. And because there's not much money that can be played with as well, someone like a 52nd pick is probably someone that could go back to the Nets.
Yeah, would be nice. Someone else who's also just got a heck of a lot of money is one of my favourite Nets, and that's a certain Mr. Joey Headband, Joey Buckets, Joe Harris. He's a man with a million nicknames, Joe Harris. He's come a long way from his Cleveland. I didn't know that Joe Harris was on the roster when Cleveland won in 2016, but he just didn't. He just fell out of the rotation. So he's come a huge way. Obviously getting, so what was it, a 4-year 75
4 year
million?
75, yeah.
475. That's a huge payday. And obviously it feels like it's been a long time coming, and Sean Marks said it was their top priority in free agency, and Joe wanted to stay. So how happy are you? It feels like it's not even a question. It's just like, on a scale, like, how happy are you that Joe Harris is going to be putting on a Nets uniform next season?
Extremely. Obviously, as you say, a huge payday for Harris, and I mean, it's a deserved one. We're seeing a huge one, and that maybe kind of makes it look quite bad, but it's anything but bad. So we've seen kind of how Harris has come along since coming to us, and yeah, it's a real kind of feel-good story. Almost kind of out the league, kind of when he was he waived by Cleveland. So it was like almost kind of out the league then, and it didn't look like anything was going to come, but he's really turned things around. He's become probably the best three-point shooter in the league, if not one of the very top ones. And seemingly had interest from elsewhere, as a player like him should have. But the fact he's chosen to stay with us is huge, and I'm absolutely delighted that we get to see him for 4 more years. Yeah,
I could hear you celebrating from Swindon, Matt, this morning at 6 a.m. when you put those messages in the Discord. No, it's brilliant. I mean, we've got to be thankful for Joe Harris. I mean, he took that discounted contract a couple of years ago so that we could approach certain players in free agency, and he was due a payday. I mean, there's not many contracts like that going to come out for him now, because he's 28, 27, 28. I mean, he's not going to get many more paydays, and you've got to take it. And one thing I would say as well, the amount of money that he did get did surprise me. I thought it might have been slightly less, but it just shows there was probably other teams in the league that were after him. I think it was Atlanta were rumoured to be in for him. But yeah, he deserves it, and we can see over the last couple of years he's going to get better this year. With the amount of open shots he's going to get as well, I think he's going to put, as I said last week, he's definitely going to be shooting over 50% from free and breaking a hell of a lot of records.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. So I'm just trying to. So as I said, as we record this, free agency is still in full swing, so I'm just double checking every notification. Because I've got notifications on for Woj, I've got notifications on for Shams, I've got notifications on for Pooch, Matt Brooks, Talking Nets, all these guys. So I've not seen anything yet, but just as we were coming on to record, we saw that Jeff Green has signed for the Nets for, I think, a vet minimum. I put a hilarious tweet out with a GIF with Gerald Green, obviously former Nets legend, doing this, the mother of all windmill dunks. And I said, it's good to see Jeff Green back in the Nets uniform. I was obviously joking, but sarcasm obviously doesn't come across on Twitter. So for everyone coming at me in the comments, they can just get back in their box. But how do you guys think Jeff Green will fit on next season's Nets? Good pickup?
Yeah, no, good pickup. Yeah, I saw that tweet actually, Matt. I knew you were joking. It's that UK humour, doesn't it? It doesn't it doesn't translate over the water. I think
not ready
that's
for
what
it.
it is.
They're not ready for
No,
it.
they're not ready for it. Not ready for it. No, yeah, good pick up. I mean, I was speaking to Matt earlier. I was saying that I think it's a name that's definitely been rumoured to the Nets over the last few years. Well, we've been needing a power forward in the last few off seasons, and I mean, he's not going to start on the team. He's going to come off the bench, and for a vet minimum contract, it's a good option to have. Again, he shoots, I think, about 35% from the free. He's a good, strong body against when he's defending bigger players. He's a former teammate of Kevin Durant and a former teammate of James Harden. So you never know. Again, they could be building bodies around that attract these type of player. Yeah, I think he'll be decent. I think if you can get another big four to start in free agency or in a trade, someone like Jeff Green off the bench will be a good option to have.
I mean, yeah, I'm quite happy with Green coming in. Obviously, probably won't see too much in the way of minutes. Obviously, a kind of older player now. I think he's maybe 34 or 35. But as Aidan says, former teammate of KD and Harden at OKC, and also Serge Ibaka. So, I mean, clearly we're just wanting to rebuild the kind of late noughties OKC thunder. So expect Russell Westbrook in next week. But yeah, I think Green is a decent enough pickup. You always kind of need those veterans on the roster. I think last season he got 9 points a game and 3 rebounds and just over 1 assist. So, I mean, not terrible for kind of a player at the kind of opposite end of his career. Yeah, fairly chuffed with this one.
I've seen a lot of people say with obviously Wilson Chandler no longer being in net, he kind of fills that gap, which I think is fine. But yeah, obviously with Serge Ibaka sending that tweet out with him on a private jet saying, I'm going to ... He's obviously on his way to Brooklyn. So I'm going to be super happy about that. But I've just seen something else come through. I'm not sure if you've seen this, guys, but as we've been recording, the guys at Talking Nets, wicked podcast, definitely go check out Keith and Hudson. They tweeted a clip of Woj saying that the Nets have shifted their focus away from James Harden, focusing more on complementary players around KD and Kyrie. So that's very interesting. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I mean, that's just scuppered the past 10 minutes of the podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think it's quite sad. So we were all quite hyped. And I mean, it was only a few minutes ago we were all saying, yeah, definitely coming. But I mean, I don't know if this is maybe Nets just trying to make Houston go, oh dear, we've now got an unhappy player and now nobody's in for him. We're stuck with this unhappy player who really wants to be in Brooklyn. And yeah, it's maybe the Nets kind of trying to trick Houston into maybe going, yeah, just give us a little less. And I'd like to hope that's the case. In terms of us going for complementary players, I mean, we've already said we've got kind of concerns about whether Harden would fit. So going for complementary players over a player that you're not entirely sure would fit, I mean, I think that certainly makes sense. But again, it's James Harden, MVP caliber player. That shouldn't kind of really be a question. So yeah, I mean, a bit disappointing that this news has come just minutes after we were all so hyped about him coming in.
Yeah, no, it's. I actually think, Cammy, you're spot on. I think it could be that situation where the Nets are going, no, we're shifting our attention elsewhere. We can look at other avenues, because it could be a Jimmy Butler situation when he was at the Timberwolves a few years back, when they were everyone was in for him, and they were like, no, we'll wait for a good package, and then I think the 76ers were like, no, we're not going to bother then. It's like, we've put a decent package on. If you're not going to accept it, we'll go elsewhere. And then they eventually panic and go, no, yeah, we'll take it. We've got an unhappy player. So yeah, it could be something like that. But I forgot to ask, by the way, Matt, do you think Harden's coming? What do you actually think's happening?
I think I'm with you guys. We'll call it player empowerment era, call it superstars getting what they want. But I think this latest thing saying the Nets have moved away from it, I don't think you move away from it. If you are starting to become interested in James Harden and it feels like James Harden is so pro coming to Brooklyn, I don't think you move away from it. Unless some other, I don't even know what complementary pieces would have had to become available to draw your eye away from that. I still think we're either, I'm gonna put my neck out on the line. We're either going to have added to the roster in the next couple of days James Harden or Serge Ibaka. I don't think we'll do both. I would love it if we did both. But that's what I think. I think James Harden's probably on because Pooch said it was, and Pooch is gospel. But that's what I think. So whether or not that comes to fruition, we'll have to wait and see.
I think that could sway a lot of people. I think there's a lot of fans, if they brought in Serge Ibaka in the next couple of days, they'd probably feel a wee bit better about a James Harden trade. Because again, it adds to the depth. I think that's the biggest fear. I think there's probably depth with this trade. We've been known the last few years to have such good depth. And I think if you're trading away that for a player, it needs to be a home run. You need to win a championship. It's like Lakers are probably looking at that as a success with the AD trade, with the players they traded for him, and it had to happen. So yeah, I totally agree. I think if someone like Ibaka came in, I'd feel a lot better about the trade happening.
Yeah, I think with if we were to kind of have to move Spencer and Karras and Jarrett Allen, we've obviously the kind of next man up thing. They're not as finished a product, but we've got, Chris Chiozza just signed back up with the Nets for next season. Obviously, you guys know I'm massive on Chris Chiozza. We've got nothing but good things heard from Nick Claxton, who's supposed to be incredible. So that's another forward that we've got. We can kind of hopefully, take a step forward this season. I still think there's possibly Michael Beasley's coming back on this team, as well as Jamal Crawford. So there are other people that are sniffing around that we could pick up on small contracts. So yeah, there's still so much. The one thing we can say for certain is that we have no idea what's going on. And the only man that does is Sean Marks, and he's a cleverer man than me when it comes to basketball. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one.
I mean, I think Mark's comments, obviously, we were kind of discussing before we started the pod. Are these comments now out the window? Like I'll just quickly read some of these comments to you.
Did like a media day thing, right? He did some media availability with some people.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the key quotes, we like the roster we have right now. We have to be ready and be flexible for whatever happens, and hopefully the decisions we make put the best roster together on the court. We're definitely in win now mode, but want something sustainable, not just something that lasts like a few years. And then I don't see us changing 5 or 6 players. So I think there's a lot to kind of take in from what Marks has said. Obviously, if we have moved on from Harden, as this report suggests, then these comments could be completely out the window and not mean anything. But I think there's certainly still a few of those comments that won't really be affected. As he says, he likes the roster. We're in win now mode, and I think that certainly will show in the moves that we do make. We're wanting to kind of build for the short term, but equally the long term as well. We don't want to just be a kind of flash in the pan, win the championship, and then just disappear for years again. We're wanting this to kind of be a regular thing. The Nets always in the finals, always kind of competing, always having the best players in the league. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how kind of things go. Not just this year, but in the coming years, given this is the kind of approach that the front office are taking at the moment.
It was funny, that press conference, because there were so many fans anticipating it on Twitter, being like, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? Like he was going to come out and go, yeah, we're going to trade Dinwiddie, Levert. Yeah, we're going to trade these guys. It's going to happen. It's like Sean Marks is such a clever guy, and you could just, if you watch any interview with him, you can tell he's so well media trained as well. He knows exactly what to say. He gives a little bit where he can go, yeah, I can't see us trading 5 or 6 guys, and then he could quite easily make a trade the next day. It was like going back to Thaddeus Young. We were talking about Thaddeus Young last week. I remember he had an interview. He was like, "Oh, Thaddeus Young's my guy. I love him. He's such a great player." And then they traded him for the pick that got Karis LeVert like the next day. It's like you can say anything these media days, but at the end of the day, they're not going to come out and tell you exactly what they're going to do, are they? So.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I loved hearing what Sean Marks had to say. I think I'm just a very trusting person, but like, before all this Harden stuff was kicking off, it was like, all Nets fans were really high on like, oh my God, this team plus, this core plus KD and Kyrie, that's enough to come out of the East. And I think now we've had this sort of Harden chat, we've almost forgotten about what kind of position we were in. You know, Spencer Dinwiddie was in borderline all-star conversations before, you know, while Karis LeVert and Kyrie were injured. And Karis LeVert came back and dropped to 50 on Boston and all this kind of stuff. And KD and Kyrie, we don't have enough to say anything about. But it's quite funny how quickly people kind of tend to forget in what good a position we were before free agency. Obviously, health permitting, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. What we won't have to wait and see for is what the schedule is going to look like. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Ian Begley tweeted out the game matrix for the 2021 season, and basically just showed what teams were playing what other teams how many times next season. And basically, the Nets are going to play each team in the East 3 times and each team in the West twice. Obviously, there was a bit of chat talking about like we were just going to play our divisions, and that would have meant 8 matches against the Knicks or something like that. So it could have been a very, very good a good season for us and a bad one for the Knicks. But what did you guys see that? What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of tables like that always confused me, but the main kind of one was the fact that we've got 3 games against the Knicks, 2 of them at the Barclays and 1 at Madison Square Garden. So I think that's great that we've got the kind of 2 home games, the home advantage. And I mean, fingers crossed we're going to have fans at these games, because seeing KD and Kyrie absolutely demolish the Knicks would be absolutely brilliant, obviously in the flesh, as well as kind of just watching on the TV. I mean, I think the fact that we're only playing teams from the West once, like away from home, is huge, saves a lot on travel. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how the kind of players keep up in terms of fitness, and will there be kind of as much load management because there's not as much travel. And I've got my fingers crossed that there's maybe a case where we play a lot of these teams out west in a bit of a road trip. We go out and play all the LA teams in over the course of a week or whatever, and get them over and done with, and then it kind of limits the travel. And I mean, obviously the chances of that happening are slim. All teams are going to need to do it, but we've just kind of got to hope for the best in that regard, because travel's never really a good thing in the NBA, especially in the US, which is such a huge country. And I mean, I think that's quite hard to forget. Like a 3 or 4 hour flight from anywhere in the UK gets you pretty much anywhere in Europe, maybe not far off kind of the far edges of it, but you're not even halfway over the Atlantic for 3 to 4 hours from the UK. And I mean, a 3 to 4 hour flight from New York barely gets you anywhere. So it's certainly a lot of travel to take in, but the fact that there's less of that could certainly be a good thing for some teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had to be really careful with how much they actually changed it. I mean, obviously they cut the amount of games by, say, 10 games, and they need to kind of keep a bit of normality, I think. I mean, it's pretty similar in terms of the way that they kind of, the home and away with the Western teams. They had to be careful with how much they actually changed it. I was laughing, like, reading about the Raptors, and obviously they're having to play their games down in Florida, in Tampa, and it makes no sense to me, because I think they got offered like New Jersey and places like that, where they're only within a bus ride of all their division teams, and they're gonna have to travel all that way again, which makes no sense to me. But yeah, I'm just looking out for the actual schedule getting released, and I think those Christmas Day games, surely this year we're actually going to get a Christmas Day game, because we should have had one last year. And I was kind of hoping a little bit that the Knicks were going to sign someone good. Like, if they were going to get a decent trade, they might still get a Russell Westbrook, because I think we're due a Nets next Christmas Day game, because it hasn't been one for years. Who do you guys think we're going to play on Christmas Day?
I'd happily take the Knicks as well, but yeah, as long as we win and Christmas isn't ruined, I couldn't really care who we play. But yeah, the Knicks would be nice.
Knicks will be decent, but I got a funny feeling if we do get one, it'll be the Warriors, just to see KD go back to the Warriors. Obviously, we won't see Klay Thompson this season, unfortunately, with his ACL, but I still think there's enough going around with the Warriors, and especially if Draymond is manning up with KD at some stage over Christmas, that's enough to fall out about. But gents, I think that'll do us today. Unless there's anything else going on in Nets world that you want to talk about. I haven't noticed any watch bombs popping off.
No, I thought I had one there, and it was a Calvin Klein 50% off. So no, I'm still all these notifications. So funny. You got your phone, you're like that, just looking at it as soon as something comes through. But no, if you want that discount code, I'll send it over after. So.
Beautiful. All right, well, we're going to leave it there. Thanks a lot for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.